Speaking Part 3 Culture 1. Does the culture of the past have an impact on today's culture? Definitely yes. I don't know what it is in other countries in the world, but in Vietnam, the culture has been quite consistent from the past till the present. This means what happened in the past shapes our current culture. 2. Which is more important in terms of culture, literature, or music? To be honest, this is not my area of interest, but as far as I know, they are of equal importance. Literature is a way for people to record their thoughts, thinking as well as the way the society operates at certain periods of time. Without it, we cannot gain such valuable insights. In terms of music, I cannot state how indispensable it is to our life. 3. How do young people learn about different cultures? The easiest way for them to do so in this digital age is through online sources like films or social media platforms. For example, Vietnamese youngsters learn a lot about Korean culture like music, food, and fashion from Korean rom-coms. 4. What kind of culture is popular among young people? I cannot say on behalf of anyone. It depends a lot on personal preferences. Some teenagers around me are obsessed with the Korean culture, while others are big fans of Japanese one. 5. How is a culture formed? Well, I have to say that this question is beyond my level of knowledge. But let me try. Vietnamese culture is shaped by our geographical features and historical events like wars. I cannot think of anything else. 6. How does the internet affect culture? I think that when it comes to this aspect, the internet can both promote and undermine or negatively affect a culture. Let me explain this. Let's talk about Vietnam. With advent of globalization and the rise of the internet, Vietnamese people are exposed to other cultures in the world. On the one hand, this can enhance their cultural identity, knowing that their culture is unique. On the other hand, they can develop a liking for other cultures and turn their back on their own, which I think is a negative impact of the internet. Speaking Part 3 Advice Consultancy Services 1. Are professional consultancy services expensive in your country? I have never tried such a service before, but I guess it's costly. For example, if you want a piece of advice from a psychologist for your mental problem, it may set you back one day's worth of your salary. And the fee would get higher if the person you consult have a high level of expertise. 2. Do you think the advice parents give their children is always good? No. I don't believe in always. Parents' advice may do their children good in the fields or things that they have experienced, but it is not the case with something parents are unfamiliar with. 3. Why do some people like to ask others for advice on almost everything? I think it is because they lack knowledge and confidence in themselves. This is often the case with small children who often rely on their parents for the majority of their decisions in life. This can also happen in people afraid of making mistakes. In this case, asking for advice from, let's say, those with more experience and expertise may give them a peace of mind. 4. Do people often ask for advice from professional people like a lawyer? Definitely yes. Consulting services are growing in popularity in Vietnam in the recent years. It's hard for a person to know everything in depth right. So when it comes to a matter that people do not have the knowledge of, it's normal for them to turn to someone with authority. 5. Who should people ask for advice on big issues, family members, or friends? It's impossible to give a definite answer to this question. It depends on who would have the relevant knowledge about the topic at hand. For example, you may reach out to your parents when it comes to choosing a career path because they are adults who have been in the labor force long enough to know the ins and outs of it. But when it comes to other things like what to wear on your wedding, which is a pretty big deal, right? Friend working in the fashion industry would be your best bet. 6. Do you follow the advice of your family members? Again, it is not the matter of simply yes or no. It all comes down to one thing: whether that family member has enough experience and knowledge for me to trust their advice. Speaking Part 3: Noise. 1. Should people be banned from talking loudly in public places? I don't think that a ban across the board is a valid thing to do. I mean, in some places, such as libraries or hospitals, people should not make too loud noise. But when it comes to a coffee shop, for instance, it would be ridiculous to forbid people from doing so. 2. Is it acceptable to talk on the phone in public? If you can keep your volume or your voice to an appropriate level, it's okay. However, of course, if you are talking too loud, affecting other people around and causing annoyance, that is often frowned upon. 3. Should parents teach their children to behave well in public? Definitely yes. I think that conducting themselves in public places is something a civilized person would do, and it's the parents' responsibility to make sure that their child have good manners in such places. 4. Why do some people not care about their actions in public? I think it's just their personality. They may be born that way, I mean being selfish and self-centered. That is the only reason I can think of. 5. What are the differences between sitting next to someone who talks on the phone and sitting next to people who talk to each other while traveling by train? I think that the difference does not lie in what type of talking. It depends more on the level of noise made. I mean, when you sit next to polite people, they may try not to bother you with their conversations, be it with someone on the phone or with someone next to them. 6. Do most people mind others talking on the phone in public places? Actually, I think that most of them do, especially when people talk very loud in a quiet environment like a bus or a library. It can be quite distracting and even considered rude. Speaking Part 3: Hospital. 1. Can a hospital function effectively without nurses? Of course not. Although I do not know much about the medical field and hospital stuff, I am pretty sure that nurses play an important, maybe irreplaceable role in that establishment. Without them, patients cannot recover quickly. 2. What are the differences between the work of a doctor and a nurse? The former specializes in examining, diagnosing, and treating patients, while the latter is more skilled at taking care of them. One more thing, they also differ in qualifications. 3. Do you think it is necessary to learn first aid skills? It's a good thing that we know that stuff. You know, our life is full of the unexpected. For example, you may be bitten by some insect while hiking in the forest. In this case, know how to treat your injury can be of critical importance. 4. Do you think that doctors and nurses are not paid enough? Yes. If we are talking about their salary at the hospital, especially public ones. In Vietnam, public hospitals are funded by the government's budget, which is often inadequate. So, in order to get a higher income, most of them have side hustles. They may work in private hospitals or clinics after work. 5. Who plays a more important role, doctors or nurses? We just cannot make such a comparison. They are equally important to the treatment of patients. I mean, there is a good reason why we often have both of them in hospitals. 6. Do you think doctors and nurses are very important? Of course, without them, who's gonna save our life? Only when people are treated and healthy can they work, contribute, and make our society wealthier. Speaking Part 3 Historical Building 1. Do most people agree to the government's funding to protect historical buildings? Actually, I do not work in the government to know about this, but as far as I know, the public do not really have a say in this kind of conservation project. But more importantly, I think that the majority of people are not fully aware of the importance of historical sites, so I believe that there are reasons for them to oppose this initiative. 2. Do Vietnamese people like to visit historical buildings? Not that I know of. I mean, these destinations are more popular among tourists rather than local people. Why is that the case? Well, I guess that local people live in close proximity of these sites, and they may see them many times before, and there is nothing new for them to explore. 3. Why do people visit historical buildings? There are two reasons that I can think of. Firstly, such buildings are often destinations included in every travel itinerary, especially of travel agency. And as a result, when people go on a package tour, they kind of have to go to these places. Another reason that I can think of is that people go there because they are interested in history or architecture. 4. Is it necessary to protect historical buildings? Definitely yes. They are an important part of a country's history and even tradition and culture. Preserving these structures mean conserving a country's identity. Moreover, many of these sites attract tourists, which can greatly benefit the local economy. Speaking Part 3 Clothes 1. Who would wear formal clothes more often, young people or old people? From my viewpoint, this has nothing to do with age, and it depends more on people's preference or work. For example, if you work in an airline, no matter how old you are, you still have to wear smart clothes such as shirts or pants. 2. Why do some people like to wear expensive clothes? There are so many reasons for this tendency, but the biggest one that pops up in my head right now is that for the most part, they want to show off that they are rich and they can afford things that normal people can't. 3. Do old people change their style of dressing? I think that this may be the case for some individuals who are passionate about fashion. But for the majority of other elderly people, they tend to stick with what they are already familiar with. Because the older a person gets, the less likely it is for him or her to change their habits. 4. Will traditional clothes disappear in the future? I think they won't, and I hope that they won't. This is because traditional clothes are part of a country's identity, and the government would do everything in their power to stop these outfits from disappearing. 5. Why do some people like to wear traditional clothes? It's because they look good or, I mean, flattering in these outfits. For example, many girls in Vietnam love to wear AO dye, which can accentuate their natural body curves. Another reason is that they are interested in things related to the country's tradition, including fashion. That's it. 6. Do you think people need to wear formally in the workplace? It depends a lot on the regulation of your organization or sometimes the nature of the job. I mean, some companies require their employees to wear formal uniforms at work to show professionalism, while others are just more relaxed on this. They even allow their staff to wear shirts or pajamas to the workplace on Saturday because to them it is the productivity that matters, not what people wear. However, in some situations, such as customer service employees who come into direct contact with customers, wearing smart clothes is a must. Speaking Part 3, Happiness. 1. How can companies improve employee happiness? There are so many ways to increase employee happiness and satisfaction. From what I've read, organizations need to recognize their employees for their outstanding performance as well as improvement at work. A supportive and friendly environment is another factor that is positively correlated to an employee's contentment. 2. Which do you think is more important in the workplace, happiness or high salaries? This may vary from one person to another. For example, for a career oriented person, find a job that makes them fulfilled may be the top priority, while to those with family to provide for, a high salary may be of greater importance. 3. Some people say that living in a happy city is boring. What do you think? I have no idea why they have such an opinion. I mean, happiness is the end goal of human right. So, how come people would feel bored when they can live their dream? 4. Do you think everyone shares a similar definition of happiness? Obviously, no. People define happiness in very different ways depending on their values and life experiences. To some people, happiness means that you have a lot of money and you can buy anything you want. But to others, having a happy family is all that they want. 5. What's the difference between adults and children's happiness? I think that the biggest difference is that children can derive pleasure from very small things in life, such as getting a new toy or being taken to the zoo, while adults want may involve material things such as money. Point 6. How can children feel happy? As I said earlier, different children may feel happy about different things. Some get a lot of fun from playing with their dolls or their peers, while others feel content when they are allowed to watch their favorite cartoon. It's quite hard to give a definite answer to this question. Speaking Part 3, Art, Photography. 1. Is it necessary for students to learn art? Although I do not know the first thing about art, yet I still grow up well. I still believe that exposure to art is vital because artistic pursuits/activities can definitely boost children's creativity and imagination. 2. What photos do people often hang on the wall at home? It varies from one person to another. From my observation, some people prefer hanging pictures of their family, while others may choose landscape paintings. 3. How do people keep their photos? There is a variety of ways people can do this. Some may keep photos in albums, which is quite old school, while others may store them electronically. 4. Is it difficult for people to learn how to take good photos? Not necessarily. I mean, it is not a survival life skill, without which you cannot live your life to the fullest. If we cannot take a photo properly, we can hire a professional photographer to do that for us, right? 5. What do people use to take photos these days, cameras or phones? I think that the majority of people may use their cell phones to take pictures because this device is more handy and easier to operate than an often heavy professional camera. 6. Why do people take photos? They may want to keep beautiful memories so that they have something to look back to. Others may want to share beautiful photos to their friends or families. Speaking Part 3 Party 1. What are the differences between holding a party at home and in a public place? Let me think about it. Off the top of my head, I think they differ in the scale of the party. I mean, your home more often than not can hold a smaller number of people compared to like a restaurant specializing in organizing events. 2. What would you do if you were disturbed by a neighbor's party? I do not want to pick fights with others, so I think that I would just inform people with authority to tell them to stop if the noise is too loud and it is too late at night. 3. Do you think music and dancing are a must at a party? Obviously, I mean, when we think of a party, we may automatically conjure up people dancing along the music. And I think no matter what kind of party it is, it cannot be called a party without music. For do you think those who tend to stay at home are less healthy than those who often attend parties? That's so ridiculous. Our health has more to do with our habits of exercising and diets than the frequency of attending parties. 5. Why do some people not like going to parties? They may be introverts who do not feel comfortable being surrounded by too many people. Or it can be the case that they are too busy with their work and study, and going to parties like wastes their precious time. 6. Why do people like parties? They may love other people's company so that they do not feel lonely. In other cases, going to parties can be a great way for us to meet new people from different backgrounds, which can enrich our life experiences and knowledge. And to some people, making new acquaintances at parties can expand their social circle, and they may need these new friends' help in the future. Speaking Part 3 Law 1. How can parents teach children to obey rules? The most important thing for parents to do is to set a good example for their children to follow. For example, they should never run the red light no matter how in a rush they are. And they should explicitly tell the children the consequence of breaking the rules. 2. What are the benefits for people to obey rules? Obviously, they may not receive punishments. For example, if you do not run the traffic light, you may not have to pay the fine. If you do not commit crimes, you may not end up in jail. 3. Do you think children can learn about the law outside of school? Actually, in Vietnam, schools, except for law universities, are not really a good place for students to learn about the law. It is just not included in the curriculum. Students often find such information and knowledge on the internet these days. 4. What kinds of behavior are considered as good behavior? I think that good behavior is a broad concept, and it depends a lot on the context or the setting we are in. If we are talking about the educational setting, good behavior may encompass being attentive during lesson, not skipping classes, and finishing your homework. And when it comes to the workplace, for example, good conduct may be being supportive and cooperative. 5. Do people in your country usually obey the law? For the most part, yes. I mean, actually, I do not know the exact percentage, but in general, I believe that Vietnamese people respect the law. 6. What rules should students follow at school? It may vary from one school to another, but in general, students are expected to go to school on time, respecting their teachers and friends, and complete their homework.